Billionaire makes his son and his butler choose between two mysterious boxes. The truth inside changed everything. The rain had just stopped, leaving the billionaire's marble courtyard glistening under the dim glow of lanterns. Two ornate boxes sat on the polished oak table between them, one sleek and modern, shining with the engraved logos of some of the world's most expensive cars, the other smaller, worn with age, yet radiating a different kind of weight. Alexander Sterling, the white-haired billionaire whose empire stretched across continents, leaned back in his velvet chair. His pale blue eyes held a mischievous glint as he tapped his cane against the stone floor. "Gentlemen," he said slowly, savoring the tension he was creating, "before you are two choices. One box," he pointed to the gleaming silver chest, "contains the keys to every luxury car I own, Bentleys, Ferraris, even the Bugatti I rarely let out of the garage. The other," he paused, his tone softening, almost reverent, as he gestured to the smaller, weathered box. "The other holds my most treasured family heirloom. A relic passed down through generations of Sterlings." The young butler, Michael, barely in his 20s, shifted uneasily. His dark suit was still damp from running through the rain earlier, and the weight of the moment pressed heavily on his chest. He had worked for Mr. Sterling long enough to see how lovingly the old man polished that heirloom, how carefully he placed it back into its velvet case each night as though it were a fragment of his own soul. Before Michael could respond, another voice cut through the silence. "Father," said Richard Sterling, Alexander's only son, stepping forward with a defiant smirk. His jaw tightened as he crossed his arms. "You can't be serious. That heirloom belongs to the family. To me. You'd actually let a servant," he spat the word like venom, "compete for it?" Alexander's eyes hardened. "I would, Richard. Perhaps it is time you understand that worth isn't always measured in inheritance or bloodline. Sometimes it's measured in heart." Michael's throat went dry. "Compete? For the heirloom?" His hands trembled slightly at his sides. He had never desired riches, cars, mansions, estates. Those belonged to men like Richard. But that heirloom, he had watched Mr. Sterling guard it like a fragile flame, watched him smile at it as though it carried whispers of his ancestors. To be entrusted with such a thing, it wasn't wealth, it was honor. "Sir," Michael finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I don't understand. Why would you even consider giving me something so precious?" Alexander leaned forward, his cane resting across his knees, and studied the boy with piercing calm. "Because, Michael, sometimes a man's true value is revealed when he chooses not what glitters, but what endures." Richard scoffed, slamming his palm against the table, the boxes rattling. "This is madness. I'll prove myself worthy, father. I'll take the cars, the heirloom, all of it. And I'll show you that no butler can stand in my place." Michael's heart pounded as he stared at the boxes. One gleamed with material power, the other pulsed with history and meaning. He had never been given a chance at anything beyond service. And now, to even be invited to this choice, it was almost too much to believe. He looked at Alexander, then at Richard, then back at the small, weathered box. His voice cracked as he asked, "And what must I do, to be worthy of it?" Alexander Sterling did not answer immediately. He let the silence thicken, as if every drop of rain still dripping from the marble statues around them was part of the test. His gaze shifted from Michael to Richard and back again, measuring them both like a jeweler weighing the worth of diamonds. At last, his lips curled into the faintest of smiles. "You ask what you must do?" Alexander's voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made Michael's chest tighten. "Prove to me that you understand value. Not wealth. Not entitlement. Value." Richard scoffed loudly, pacing like a caged animal. "Value? Don't waste our time with riddles, father. The value of those cars is obvious, millions in assets, speed, power, prestige. Only a fool would choose that dusty trinket over them." He jabbed a finger toward the smaller box, his face twisting in disgust. Michael's eyes flicked to the heirloom box, its wood etched with delicate carvings dulled by years of touch. He swallowed hard, his voice trembling with honesty. "But sir, I've watched you with it. Every evening when you open it, your whole expression changes. I've seen you hold it as if it were your very heartbeat. If something can carry that much of a man's soul, then it's worth more than any key, any car." For a moment, Richard's jaw clenched. The truth in Michael's words unsettled him, though pride quickly masked the flicker of doubt. He turned on Michael with a sneer. "You think you deserve it just because you've been lurking in the background, polishing glasses and opening doors? You're nothing but a shadow in this house. That heirloom is Sterling blood. You'll never be one of us." Michael flinched, but he didn't look away. Instead, he met Richard's glare with quiet steel. "I don't need to be a Sterling to honor it." The words hung heavy in the air. Alexander's eyes narrowed, searching the young butler's face as though trying to read what lay beneath his humble defiance. Finally, Alexander pushed himself to his feet, his cane striking the marble with a decisive clack. Then let it be tested. Richard spun toward him. Tested? How? Alexander's gaze swept over the courtyard, the lingering mist curling around his shoulders like a cloak. If either of you wish to possess what lies in these boxes, you will not simply claim them. You will earn them. Tonight. Earn them? Michael asked softly, his voice unsteady but eager. Yes. Alexander's tone sharpened. Through a contest, not of wealth, but of will. A trial that will reveal who among you truly understands the weight of possession. He paused, then leaned closer, his voice lowering to a near whisper, though it carried like thunder. One of you will walk away with power. The other with legacy. But know this, the wrong choice could cost you more than you imagine. Richard's lips curved into a wolfish grin. Finally, something worthy of my time. Tell me the challenge, father. I'll crush him quickly. Michael's palms were damp, his heart pounding so hard he feared the others could hear it. Still, despite the fear curling in his gut, he raised his chin. I'll accept whatever test you set, sir. Alexander Sterling straightened, his shadow stretching long in the lantern light. Then he lifted his cane and pointed toward the looming estate behind them. Very well, he said. The trial begins inside. Follow me. And with that, the old billionaire turned, his footsteps echoing against the wet stone as he led them into the mansion, leaving the two young men, heir and servant, on the brink of a contest neither fully understood. The heavy oak doors of Sterling Manor groaned as Alexander pushed them open. The vast hallway was drenched in golden candlelight, the chandeliers above casting jagged shadows across the marble floor. The air was thick with polish and old secrets, the kind that clung to the bones of the house itself. Michael stepped inside cautiously, his eyes darting over the portraits that lined the walls, stern-faced Sterling staring down as if they too were witnesses to the night's unfolding trial. Richard strutted behind his father, his footsteps sharp and confident, as though the manor itself belonged to him already. Alexander's cane struck the floor with slow, deliberate taps as he led them deeper into the house. At last, he stopped before a set of towering double doors carved with the Sterling crest. He turned, his pale eyes gleaming with a strange mixture of severity and sorrow. This room, he said, has tested every Sterling heir for generations. Tonight, it will test you both. Inside, you will face 3 challenges, each designed to strip away vanity and reveal truth. Only when you've passed will you be worthy to choose between the boxes. Michael's throat tightened. 3 challenges? He was just a butler. He had no training for this, no birthright, no armor. Only his will. Richard smirked, brushing past Michael with a shoulder shove. This will be over quickly. Alexander's gaze flicked to his son. Be careful, Richard. The manor does not bend to arrogance. It exposes it. With that, he pushed the doors open. The room beyond was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a great wooden table, upon which rested 3 objects, a candle, a silver dagger, and a leather-bound book whose edges were frayed with age. The flickering candlelight made each item seem to glow with a different kind of power. Alexander's voice echoed in the chamber. The first trial is simple in form but not in meaning. Each of you will choose one of these objects and explain its worth, not to me, but to yourselves. Speak honestly, for deceit has no place here. Richard laughed. That's it? A parlor trick. He swaggered forward, his hand hovering over the dagger. With a dramatic flourish, he picked it up, the blade catching the light. This, he declared, holding it aloft, represents strength. Power. The ability to carve one's path and defend what is rightfully his. Without strength, all other values are meaningless. He slammed the blade back onto the table with a clatter, smirking at Michael. Michael approached slowly, his hands trembling slightly. His eyes drifted over the dagger, then the candle, before finally settling on the book. Gently, he placed his fingers on its worn cover, feeling the grooves of time. This, he whispered, is memory. Knowledge. The voices of those who came before us. A man may lose his wealth, his power, even his body, but what he learns, what he carries from those before him, his voice caught, but he steadied it, that never dies. That's what gives life meaning. The chamber fell silent. Richard scoffed, but there was a flicker in his father's eyes, something sharp and unspoken, almost approval. Alexander's cane struck the floor. Clack. The first trial is done, he said gravely. The second awaits. He turned, motioning to a staircase that spiraled into the shadows above. The sound of the storm outside echoed faintly through the manor, as though nature itself was holding its breath for what would come next. Michael glanced at Richard, who was grinning like a predator. His heart hammered in his chest, but he followed Alexander up the stairs nonetheless, whispering to himself, I don't need wealth. I just need to prove myself worthy. The staircase creaked under their weight as Alexander led them higher into the manor. The walls narrowed, closing in like a throat, until at last they emerged into a chamber lit only by lightning flashes leaking through tall arched windows. The room was nearly empty, except for a single iron cage that hung suspended in the center by heavy chains. Inside the cage sat a young maid from the estate, her hands bound, her eyes wide with terror. She let out a muffled cry as the storm's thunder shook the walls. Michael froze. His stomach lurched. He knew her, Clara, the maid who often shared whispered jokes with him in the kitchens after long shifts. Richard's grin faltered for the first time. What is this? Alexander's face was grim. The second trial is the trial of choice. One of you must free her. The other must remain behind to bear the consequence. The consequence? Richard asked sharply. The cage, Alexander replied coldly. It is rigged to fall at the strike of midnight. Whoever chooses to stay will be trapped inside until morning, if they survive. The other may walk away unharmed. Clara whimpered, her eyes darting between them. Please, please don't leave me here. Michael's heart pounded so hard he felt dizzy. Sir, he whispered, turning to Alexander, this is madness. She's innocent. Yes, Alexander said. His tone was neither cruel nor kind, but weighed with finality. That is why one of you must decide. Will you choose the risk for another, or choose yourself? Richard's jaw tightened, and for a moment Michael saw the conflict flash in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced with cold certainty. I won't throw my life away for a servant, Richard snapped. She is replaceable. I am not. If Michael is so desperate to prove his worth, let him stay. Michael's chest constricted. His thoughts raced, Clara's tear-streaked face. Richard's callous words. The heirloom box. Alexander's piercing gaze. He heard his own voice before he even decided. I'll do it. Clara gasped. Michael, no. Alexander's eyes sharpened, his cane tapping the floor once. You are certain? Michael swallowed, his throat dry, but he nodded. If it means she lives, then yes. I'll take her place. Richard burst into laughter, cruel and triumphant. You see, father? This is why he will never be more than a butler. He throws himself away for scraps while I. Enough. Alexander's voice boomed through the chamber, cutting Richard short. His expression was unreadable as he stepped closer to Michael, studying the trembling young man who stood with fists clenched, ready to walk into the cage. There it is, Alexander whispered, almost to himself. The choice that reveals the man. Lightning split the sky, filling the room with white fire. Clara sobbed with relief, though fear still shook her body. Richard stood rigid, his pride wounded but his arrogance intact. Michael exhaled shakily, stepping toward the cage, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat of destiny. And then Alexander raised his hand. Stop. Michael froze mid-step, breath caught in his chest. The trial is complete, Alexander declared. What? Richard barked. But he didn't. Alexander's eyes snapped to his son, cold as ice. He did. He chose. He turned back to Michael, his voice lowering to a tone heavy with something rare, respect. You were willing to sacrifice freedom for another's safety. That is the measure of value I sought. You have passed where many have failed. Michael's knees nearly buckled with relief. Clara broke into tears, whispering his name like a prayer. Richard's face flushed crimson. This is absurd. He's a fool, father. And you're going to give him our heirloom because of this ridiculous game? Alexander's gaze lingered on his son, his expression darkening. The heirloom is not yours by birthright alone, Richard. It is for the one who proves worthy. He tapped his cane against the marble once more. Clack. The final trial remains. And it will decide everything. Thunder roared outside as the old man turned toward the stairwell leading deeper into the manor's heart. Michael's pulse thundered in his ears. He had survived the second trial, but what awaited in the last, he could not begin to imagine. The storm outside howled like a restless spirit as Alexander led them down into the manor's lowest chamber. The walls here were lined with stone, the air colder, older, as if the house's very foundations held its most guarded truths. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal draped in crimson velvet. Upon it rested the weathered box, the heirloom itself, its carved wood glowing faintly in the flickering torchlight. Alexander's voice rang out, deep and commanding. This is the final trial. The heirloom of Sterling. Michael's breath caught. He had seen it before only in Alexander's private study, handled with reverence, never touched by anyone else. Richard stepped forward immediately, arrogance sharpening his tone. Finally. Enough games. That heirloom is mine. I am the only rightful son. Alexander's cane struck the stone floor with a thunderous clack. Silence. The sound echoed like judgment itself. Richard froze, seething, but dared not speak. Alexander turned to Michael. Step forward. Michael's hands trembled as he approached the pedestal. The box seemed to hum with weight, not of gold or jewels, but of something older, legacy itself. He hesitated, looking back at Alexander. Sir? I'm not sure I deserve to even touch it. Alexander's face softened, just slightly. That humility, Michael, is why you are here. Richard's fists clenched. Father, this is madness. He's a servant. He has no sterling blood. Alexander's piercing gaze fell upon his son. His next words shattered the silence like glass. There is no sterling blood. Richard blinked, stunned. What are you saying? Alexander's voice grew heavy with confession, the storm outside punctuating each word. Your mother and I could not bear children. We never had a son of our own. You, Richard, were adopted into this house. As was I long before you were born. I was nothing but the orphan child of a maid who died in service to this family. They took me in, and in time, entrusted me with this heirloom. Through it, I became heir to everything they had. Not by blood. By worth. Michael's eyes widened. You were an orphan? Alexander nodded slowly. Yes. And it was this heirloom that marked my place. Not my name. Not my bloodline. Whoever holds it is the true heir of the sterling legacy. Richard staggered back, his face draining of color. No, that's impossible. You're lying. You. Alexander's voice cracked like thunder. Enough. You have shown your greed at every turn tonight. You scoffed at memory, mocked sacrifice, and spat on humility. You have proven yourself unworthy. He turned toward Michael, his expression firm but glowing with pride. Michael, you alone chose honor over riches, sacrifice over safety. You alone understand the true weight of possession. Step forward, and claim what is rightfully yours. Michael's heart raced. He felt the weight of Richard's furious glare burning into him, but he kept walking, each step carrying him closer to the heirloom. His hand hovered above the box. For a moment, he faltered. Sir, he whispered, his voice raw, are you certain? A butler, an orphan like me, heir to all this. Alexander leaned closer, his voice gentle now, almost fatherly. I see myself in you, Michael. And I know, you will honor it better than I ever did. Michael's hand lowered. His fingers touched the worn wood, and in that instant, the room seemed to exhale, a silent acknowledgement of destiny fulfilled. Richard let out a broken cry, stumbling forward. No! That was supposed to be mine. Everything was supposed to be mine. He reached toward the box, but Alexander's cane slammed against the stone, blocking him. Do not touch what is no longer yours, Alexander growled. Your greed has cost you everything. Michael lifted the heirloom, its weight heavy yet strangely natural in his hands. He looked at Alexander, who nodded solemnly. From this night forward, Michael, Alexander declared, his voice echoing in the chamber, you are heir to the sterling name, to its legacy, and to all its possessions. Not by blood, not by title, but by worth. The heirloom has chosen, and it has chosen you. Richard collapsed to his knees, his pride shattered. His voice trembled in disbelief. I've lost everything. Alexander turned away, his face weary but resolute. No, Richard. You lost nothing. You threw it away. Michael clutched the heirloom close to his chest, his eyes stinging with tears. For the first time in his life, he felt not like a servant, but like a man who truly belonged. Outside, the storm broke. The thunder rolled away into silence, and faint beams of dawn began to filter through the high windows of Stirling Manor. Michael was no longer just a butler. He was the heir.